Okay, great. It's the 29th of November. It's 6:34 a.m. in Bath, England, and we've got our Asia Pacific group this morning. So I'm really pleased. We're going to just go through and I'll give you the latest and greatest, and you guys can pose any other questions that we need to go through. The exciting news we have, which we want to get to, is over this month, I'm calling this month December, forgive me, in anticipation, we're going to be getting each of you out in a sort of 3-minute clip to 25,000 or so HR bosses, managing directors. It's going to be managed from the States, but what I wanted to do was to have us prepare our ground so that we can really hit the ground running from 2 January. So a colleague of mine who's also a member runs a particular database that he's been nurturing, which is very, very important for a number of years, which is a very active opt-in database of bosses. And effectively, it's he publishes topical and notable news and trending learning and development, if you like. So we just had an introduction from Dr. Ron, John, Mike, for example. Each of you have, as you've just given me, a sort of 2-minute pitch. What I would like you to consider as we line you guys up, I'll introduce you directly to Jeff Friedland, who's the vice president and boss of this particular database. He'll get a call together with you, and just as you are now, all ready to roll, nicely lit, good sound, nice background, comfortable, relaxed. What I would like is, what he's going to do, because he wants to do it from himself as the anchor, does it for his TV studio in Denver, is just a quick, my name is Robert Clark, I have this background, and this is my specialism. And then he'll say, so what specifically are we talking about, or what is the specific message we want to deliver? And what we want to do, therefore, is then 2.5 minutes or so of a real clear pitch, not a marketing pitch, but a content-driven piece of work. Does that make sense? So again, I'll introduce you individually. You'll make an appointment that suits you, and if you want to take him up on this, we're going to just schedule these through December, January. I think the reason for me that HRs particularly want to get a grip of this is because they're going to start wanting to book people for that January period. Particularly, I mean, all of these things, you know, longevity, mental health, stress, leadership, all of the things that you guys speak to are going to be this, you know, a 2023 new start. And the new start really applies to businesses as well as consumers. So we're going to want them to book you for these 30-minute blasts, and then use that as your an event that you can use the interactivity of Zoom, really have them, maybe send them some information or video that we've already published on your listings from YouTube, or anything else that might be background, and a really good interactive Q&A. So it will then act as a relationship developer, either with the organization in question or a network of organizations. Okay. Sound okay? How's that sound, John?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. So when you say content-driven pitch, it's specifically talking about our content. We're not delivering any content in that.
Well, I kind of want to, yeah, I think the hybrid of the both is the interesting thing to strike. Maybe you can help me out by, you know, as specialists, by sort of helping me sort of reverse brief that, because really I think it's this audience is going to be 70% of the audience is going to be watching this on smartphones and mobile devices.
Yeah.
They're going to be kitchen table, at work, breakout room, train, whatever. And so the sound bites being 3 minutes is got to have some juice in there. You need to give them some fresh meat. How's that sound?
Absolutely. No, that's fine.
Maggie?
I'm mute.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Maggie, you're muted.
Oh, sorry.
This is what happens when you rush in from a 6.5 hour drive.
No problem.
May I suggest then, particularly if it's a 3-minute soundbite, that we focus on the benefits of our content to the audience rather than the features of our content?
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to do is, again, maybe one of you could sort of come back at me with a kind of case in point for the benefit of the 20, 30 or so people who are in our Asia Pacific group, could just give me an idea of what we're trying to achieve. So it's up to us to steer this, but I think it's a, as you say, benefit-led, content-led, rather than a pitch. You know, I'm this, I've got 30 years experience, don't worry, I'm a safe pair of hands, I'm pretty awesome, I've got a book out, isn't really going to be what they want. I think what they want is a bit of an answer to the question. Ron, you gave one just now in terms of that answer, didn't you? In the sense that actually these are simple steps, and some of those really sort of preventative steps in stress. So almost, how do we start 2023 with the right foot forward? How would you sort of pitch it, put you on the spot, but how would you sort of frame it, do you think?
Well, for me personally, I mean, I have a very simple answer to that, and that is that we have well, this is truly, I believe, a unique model of stress and health, and I view it as a balancing beam. Our life is a balancing beam. And on one side, we want to identify and minimize stress. And I define stress as anything that compromises your immune system and promotes chronic inflammation, the common denominators in all disease. So on the one hand, identify and minimize as many of those stressors as possible. And on the other hand, build resilience by focusing on the pillars of health. And the whole balancing beam pivots on your genes and how they express themselves. So we have 5 stressors: emotional, environmental, postural, nutritional, and dental stress. And we have 5 pillars of health: sleep, breathe, nourish, move, and think. They each affect one another, and exploring those stressors and those pillars is the subject of our wellness program.
Yeah, beautiful. So that was 60 seconds. So in fact, what you've got then is you also have, it's a long time. 3 minutes is great because you've got time for maybe a tiny vignette, a sort of sub story. John, one of your sort of how I do this is through this methodology. But I think, as Maggie said, it's benefit led. But that was great because you've given me enough of a nugget to want to sort of sink my teeth into. After that, I want these people to go to your $300 to $1,000 listing, not a so the click through or the call to action is to this 30-minute kind of interactive workshop, which is a income generator, marketing device, and all-round feel-good piece of work, which I think is, an extension of business development, but also really, really delivering some quality back and forth content. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had one in Dubai, which I've seen a social link on yesterday or the day before, where one of our speakers came on to a small group in Dubai. He was in Sydney. There was a sort of 30-minute Q&A. They knew a bit about him. He's a vice president of Disney, former vice president of Disney. Dan Cockrell, still currently in Sydney, but based in Denver. His sort of day job is delivering workshops, full day workshops of, 10, 15, 20 plus $1,000 per day. but he's very happy to do these $500 workshops because he now has a group of dedicated fans in Dubai who are all vice presidents of their own businesses, and of course not short of a few quid, as we say back here in the old country. So all that is good. I think that's the methodology. Okay, just to repeat back some of those updates from last week, which we're just maturing, is we've also got obviously an enterprise sales process going. We have a number of substantial kind of chambers of commerce, digital incubators, various other people who are really cleverly, I think this is a great model that I want to exploit. They're sponsoring a 30-minute to 40-minute blast from you at about $500 to $1,000. So that's your income net 5%. They then advertise that to their own community. So in Pittsburgh, it's 15,000 businesses locally. You know, former Rust Belt kind of environment. They're transitioning to digital. They're feeling the pain of the disappearance of their steel industry. They're talking about succession. They're all running small businesses, you know, machine shops, as they call them. You know, small for the United States is only, you know, 5 to 10 million turnover. And all of the stresses and strains that are involved in those kind of exercises. So the cool thing is that, in fact, in this particular instance, Penn State University is paying the bill, and they have a sort of covenant of bequeathing information and purpose out to that community. Soft and hard skills, soft and hard skills. And almost the soft skills are kind of Trojaned or layered into those hard skills so that they get that attendance from the right people. Florida Chamber of Commerce, similarly sponsored by a local substantial business. Obviously, they include Disney and McDonald's and Coca-Cola and various other people who are based down there. And then they get on average 550 bosses on each webinar. And they're paying $1,000 a time. I'm trying to get them into a weekly webinar process, but currently they're monthly. So we're sort of booking that from January, but I'd rather book 30 of them rather than 10. So that's what I'm sort of gently, or slightly less gently, trying to push them into. But anyway, that's my job as enterprise sales. Okay, and then and then we're having lots of inbound sort of individual inquiries, people who are with startups that are funded, who are looking for various bits and pieces. I even had an inquiry from Kazakhstan from a medical AI company who are looking for advice on specific areas and so forth. For wherever you are, Australia, St. Petersburg, United States, Sweden, Dubai, if you sort of take the opposite, provided you're still in a reasonably comfortable time zone, you're exotic, and you're all exotic to me. You're exotic on top of what your sort of current pay grade is. If you forgive the sort of rather sort of blunt view of it, but if in the United Kingdom, for example, it's only 6:48 here, but in 2 hours' time, doing a breakfast call into London from Sydney, from Port Macquarie, from St. Petersburg, awesome. 30 minutes, 500 quid, straight into the banking community while they're supping their coffee, Q&A in a room. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that they're all virtual, right? What happened in Dubai this week was a horseshoe of 12 people around a screen. One of our members was there physically because he bought this. He was running the conference, and that room was buzzing. And what happens, you'll see on social media, is we did a kind of reverse selfie. So Dan, who was on the screen, and all the people all gathered together and did a nice kind of piece of social media, and that's gone really well. I can see it's already got thousands of views, eyeballs. Makes sense? Any questions?
No,
No.
that's very good.
Yeah.
All right, so
Fantastic.
I'll get you introduced to Jeff Friedland in the next couple of days, and you'll be able to get yourselves sorted.
Great.
So-
Robert?
Yeah.
Robert, I received an email from support at Elevate today that said, it was saying that they'd sent me an email and it sounded like I hadn't responded to it. It was an urgent Elevate support message
Hmm.
that says, we're starting a major campaign to over 25,000 businesses next week, which is what you're talking about. We
So
wrote to you
this is,
today in Elevate, kindly respond yes or no as indicated, but I didn't get an email to respond yes or no to.
Which is the subject of my next point. Thank you for
Uh-huh.
setting that up.
Nice segue.
Beautiful segue, John. It's as if we didn't talk about it before. There we go.
Yeah, it's all planned.
What I've done is I've just made sure that our group of providers are, I want to repeatedly make sure that we have an open communication channel. So you'll know from messages previously that there are, a couple of hundred of you. The most important thing for me is to make sure that you are receiving requests to purchase, most importantly, okay? When you go in and log into Elevate, and I'm logged in under my personal ID here, you will be able to click over here on settings, and then you'll have a series of editorial pieces of information. So this is your sort of back office. The listings that you have open or closed that you can maintain here, the transactions that you've achieved, and of course all of these transactions visible to you as the buyers and the sellers, and it kind of almost acts as a CRM or a sales pipeline for you. Details of your account, and most importantly notifications. So John, when we sent these out on email, we were saying we have already sent you a message through Elevate. And if you have not received that message through Elevate, that's because you have not checked this box here.
Yeah.
So that's the box to say the admin messages from Elevate come through. These here are should all be checked initially, and they're basically saying anybody who wants to buy your stuff, inquire about your stuff, your listings, or all of the transactions, and they're all explained here, are all clear. Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't have a daily newsletter, we do a weekly newsletter.
Oh.
And that's automatically generated from the listings that come through. So this is the one that you want. And those of you who are watching or listening, it is the emails from administrators. So log in, hover over your icon, settings, notifications, and then emails from administrators. And you've got to check that I agree to receive emails from the Elevate team, okay? And there are a number of people who are not. So that's the most important thing, because if we're sending updates in terms of this is what we're planning, that's what we're doing, and so forth, it's important that you can check in. That makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good
Oh, I
stuff.
can't do that.
Okay. What we also do is that we update this particular area here. And so admin at Elevate is really shorthand for, support at elevate.ac is shorthand for a number of people that help us in the States and Europe. There's not any individual person that type out. Messages were sent by Bert, not that you need to know, and that is a real person. He exists. It's not just a pseudonym. And so on how it works, we've got a whole list here of do's, and then I try and keep a frequently asked questions section up to date here as well. That keeps you abreast of the areas that are, obviously questions that are answered most commonly. Okay. Now, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Was that a question?
I think I've lost you, but it doesn't matter. I'll go over it tonight when I speak with you.
Okay. The page, because there's a lot of different bits and pieces here, just for Ron, for your benefit, for any of the others of you who are new. When you come straight in fresh to elevate.ac, you see a lot of all sorts of messages. These are workshops from previous weeks. These are messages about buyers that are looking for your services. I'll come back to in a second. And then also I publish here support messages. So, and they're all linked within the how it works here. So in terms of peer review and other kind of observational things on sales and various other things, okay? Most importantly, when we send buyers to this page, so this, for example, this week, much to my own personal stress, I was interviewed by the same person, Jeff Friedland, that I just talked to you about. And we actually had quite an extensive talk, about 5 or 10 minutes, where I spoke to the human resource director about this concept. My concept being that you can, speakers will not cannibalize their full speaker rates of $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 by monetizing a interactive Zoom-based workshop, because those two things are quite different. And I'd spoken to the sort of HR director and that was recorded. That's going out this week. Point I'm making is I'm sending them to this page. And these here are going to be ranked according to the ratings and reviews and so forth, but they are within this kind of price point bracket of $250 to $1,000, because I want these HRs to buy initially from you this asset class or this commodity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for example, Mike, who's been prolific in his generation of amazing positive reviews, loads and loads and loads of them from transactions that he's generated here, is going to rank very highly. Others that are starting up less so, but in the home page environment, we want to make sure that we rank according to where you're at, to be fair, and our algorithm actually will take care of that going forward. So we're going to start the buyer journey in this type of window. Now, again, Dr. Ron, John, those of you who haven't sort of seen this before, from a perspective of a buyer, if I wanted to, I can find only keynotes that conform to much higher price points if I wish, up to $25,000 in one case. And these are ones that we probably won't sell a great deal of off the site, but you will as a result of transacting these smaller price points. The challenge with selling $8,000 keynotes from Elevate is that the buyer generally wants to go through their own procurement platform. So John, for example, we will happily transact for you here. It's unlikely that a buyer will put their American Express card on this particular purchase. They'll want us to generate a invoice and so forth. So I don't want the buyer to be presented with just another bunch of keynotes as if this was a speaker bureau, because that will kind of confuse them and put them off. So I'm starting with not one, but I'm starting with a view that I'm sending them to as a result of this that is just about there. Okay. So I talk about this new modality, this kind of 30 to 60 minute workshop in this kind of area of price point. And then, so these are the kinds of results that they will see. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Didn't you say once before that the ceiling in the US is $1,000 before they have to start making invoices and going through a different financial journey?
Yeah, it's a roughly speaking, you know, a VP in our kind of range is going to be able to buy offline without any procurement approval at less than $1,000.
Okay.
And I think that's what almost what you want to see is the enterprise sale, the classic enterprise sale. I think is what we did just recently in New York, a leadership group of 6-7 people. Chief executive buys the session. The leadership group and he go through that session, which is quite a sort of personal, interactive session. And after that point, he will personally rate that session. In the case of the New York workshop, he has 12,000 staff. So anything, the next step for him is, okay, how do I deploy this wider? What do we do in terms of using a wider resource net of people within Elevate? Does that make sense? So I think, Maggie, I don't think there's a science in this, but I should go away and try and see if I can answer that question more scientifically. From the United States perspective, I think the $1,000 range is about the sort of northern limit of what they will do speculatively on a credit card, as on a business credit card. Anyone else had a view on that? Mike?
Mike did.
I would say somewhere in the range of 750 to 1,000, but I do know that there are some folks there who even spend up to 2,000 without permission. I mean, just scan it, do it, and get it done, up to 2,000. But I would say most of it is somewhere between 750 and 1,000.
Thanks, Mike.
If you're in a startup, speaking from experience, you've got a pretty powerful wallet. You know, you can probably spend sort of $20,000-$30,000 because obviously you're running the show. If you're in this sort of enterprise level, a CFO is not going to give you permission unless it's probably for travel or anything more than around 750 to 1,000, I think. Okay. I do think it's worthwhile, Dr. Ron, as a newcomer, perhaps just to emphasize, is what we want to try and achieve is the lower price point initially, generate those positive ratings and reviews, and then just dial it up. What we don't know, because we're young, is as a result of all these marketing and communication exercises, where your equilibrium price is going to be. So,
yep, no, that makes perfect sense, John. Robert, I don't. That makes perfect sense. I'm not under any illusion.
Yeah, I was just talking to a person in Sunshine Coast, hour or so ago now, and I was mentioning to her as well about the concept of what we're about here. And I think as a challenger to the sort of speaker bureau type of mentality, which for me is the dinosaur, the concept here is of a digital marketplace and software that really breaks down that barrier, enables you to be contacted directly, enables you to make those negotiations, use our platform to have an agreement in between the buyer and the seller. So they'll check a box to say you accept the agreement. Part of that agreement, Ron, suggests that whilst I'm giving you my observations, they should not be construed as advice that might be end up to the detriment of your organization. And so just in case, because you might be dealing with the United States, it's a litigious nation, that you actually get on the right side of that, and also then use our platform for secure payment. The fact that it's held in escrow pending a successful result is very disruptive. It doesn't sound like it because we're all used to doing that with Uber and Airbnb and everything else. But it means pending a successful outcome. So, you're backing yourself to deliver a great session. The person who's buying that will then be prompted to say, how'd you get on? Great. The funds are released. They get to review, and you in turn get to rate them as viewers. And that reciprocal rating and review, the contract and the trust and security through the escrow is what is new about what we do. It's not new as in transformative to the world. It's the using what now has become commonplace in other marketplaces, Airbnb, Booking.com, Uber, for those people who have escrow-based marketplaces. And as soon as people grasp that, they'll realize that it's pretty different from landing on a site with a lot of static photographs that are run by one person as a bureau that has a phone number. And you say, hey, I need somebody to talk to me about stress and mental health. So, oh yeah, we've got this guy who's particularly safe pair of hands. It will cost you $15,000. I need 30% up front. They'll charge 35% to 50% as a fee. And I think they're going out of business. I just feel like this is, whether it's us and a whole group of other people, but the digital transformation of speaking is radically different. And it enables us, doesn't it? Because of the purpose that we actually have. All of you are doing this for more than just money. There are better ways of potentially just, making your fortune. It's about the purpose around this. A speaker bureau will choke the capability of you speaking to lots of people, and clients included. And what we want to do is invert that and enable you to change the lives of thousands and thousands of people in 2023, as well as doing extremely well out of it at the same time. How does that sound, Mike?
Sounds all right. We'll see if it works.
That's he's put the cards on the table. Absolutely. So really the key for me then is to start the 2023 rolling really, really nicely by making sure that we can get you in front in video of as many of these decision makers as possible. The challenge on LinkedIn is that LinkedIn is a proprietary social network. They don't want leakage out to lesser social networks like ours. So anytime that you actually post on LinkedIn and you post an external link, you're downgraded in the show stakes. The way to get around those elements is working within the LinkedIn sphere, is making sure that what we do is we hashtag Elevate Elite on things that we really want all of our group to be able to amplify. And we don't put external links in the primary message. We put them in the comments. And that then will have the LinkedIn algorithm, after 15 or so positive comments, start to shoot that post out to a greater and greater group. And so as a community, we can amplify these messages substantially within other social networks, and then ultimately drive them to here. Well, I think one of my, as far as well as just a daily contacting chief executives and working on enterprise sales, which is my job, for you, my bet for 2023 is making sure that we can work with individuals who manage very substantial databases that already have the trust of tens of thousands of people. And that's what I'm going to try and achieve. All righty, Ron, I said 40 minutes roughly with time for Q&A. We're about there. Any more questions?
I've got a question, Robert. I don't know if we want to discuss it here or offline, but as you know, I went out and gave a couple of very short 30-minute presentations. My people who showed up for that paid for it, left a peer review, and that's how I got so many. The question I have is now I'm getting messages from those same people and asking, why are they getting messages from Elevate every day? They're not a buyer, they're not a company, they only bought from me because they wanted to give me a peer review and help me get started on my road.
So the point, I get it. Yeah, the point that what we're trying to do with our kind of database cleanup is to make sure that if these people are opted in and out, they don't receive those messages. So that's it's something that I'll pay close attention to in the next couple of days to make sure that anybody who's come in as a viewer isn't going to be bombarded with marketing messages. Okay. You should feel comfortable that in future that anybody you invite, or those people who come and purchase, are not going to be bombarded with marketing messages to purchase other stuff.
However, I got your word on it, so that's no problem. That's all I needed.
Notwithstanding, yeah, that's fine. Notwithstanding that, what we have had to do in the last week or so is just to see if we can establish communication with a number of people. In fact, over 100 people who registered over the summer period this summer, and with a view to doing we don't really know what. So we just wanted to qualify them as buyers, sellers, or observers. And so that's the last message to go out. They've also checked those boxes in preferences as well. And obviously there are circumstances.
Some did, some didn't, because some did check it and some didn't check it, because some of them simply signed up, logged in, attended my session, gave me a peer review, and didn't go through all the notification page and the settings page, they didn't go through all that. But that's okay. I understand now. And I'm sure
it's a good point, because
Rob and Maggie,
it's a very good point, because it's not actually very, it's not we don't platform that guidance to viewers probably as well as we should do. So that's something that I definitely want to take into account.
We're learning as we go through this, Robert. We understand you're learning and we're learning. We're all learning this together. So all these little adjustments, I'm only mentioning it because with John and Ron and Maggie, I'm sure they have a bunch of trusted friends who are previous, maybe not big time customers, but just friends who want to help them and will help them. And we don't want to bombard them, but we're all learning, and what you're doing now, it sounds right. It sounds correct. And I think you're on the right track. I was just a question I had because couple of my customer people have asked me. That's why I was asking you. So
it's a really good point. And just saying again, I had a gentleman from the States who I worked with in the last several days, John, real name John. And we're talking about actually how, as a new asset class, a $550 30-minute workshop, for example, would go down with his own database. So Dr. Ron, John, Maggie, this is a sort of, another way of looking at this slightly differently, because now you have a place where you have a different asset class, not a keynote, not a in-person workshop. You might want to, and this isn't a necessity by any means, market that to your internal audience and sense that I've got this new session. I'd love you guys to know about it and enjoy it. And you'll know that a number of our people, high profile speakers, have their own databases of thousands or tens of thousands of people that follow them. So of course, that's a great opportunity, not just for them, but for all of us to be able to bring those in. So the more social media, connectivity that we have, the better. Another, again, thorny questions are good. Another thorny question, the last thorny question is, again, how do you put a $500, $600 workshop out there and it not cannibalize people's perceptions of your quality as a speaker if you're a $10,000 speaker? And that's really a bit of a leap of faith, in the sense that provided that the HR boss, calling them our sort of ideal buyer, they'll understand the nature of those different asset classes and commodities. A keynote in person in front of 1,000 people, $15,000, takes travel and expenses, is complex, requires research and development. A 30-minute workshop, $550, does not take the research and development, is something you do from home. It is something that you're doing essentially from a purpose-driven base plus a price base. But this is how I've begun to do, is to educate these people that, isn't it amazing? You can get access to John Carroll, this prominent keynote speaker, from home in a much more intimate, interactive session. If you did your keynote online on a Zoom call, it's going to be all right. But actually, if it's just one-way traffic, people may as well watch it on catch up. So what, John, we've discussed previously, haven't we, is if it's a 30-minute zinger, $500, interactivity is absolutely everything. And Mike, I'm sure you achieved that with the sessions that you did.
Right.
Plenty of questions, plenty of activity, all the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question
So-
and answers was expected from my audience, because they know that's what I normally do. I give them 10 or 15 minutes at the end. They'll even go to a 30-minute session and even willing to spend 15 minutes in question and answers, which is a large amount because it's half the presentation. But they're willing to do it if the questions are key, because as we all know, some people are going to be quiet, some people are going to ask questions. Well, the ones who are quiet have the same questions, they just don't ask it. So they enjoy sitting back and listen to the question and the answer, and that personal contact. You can shape it, quote it, change it to their industry. If there's a different industry than what yours is normal, you can change it to specific examples from their industry and give real hard examples where they can identify themselves internally. So question and answers is a great way to go, and doing it this way works.
Forgive me for interrupting. There's a tiny delay, not surprisingly, because you're in St. Petersburg. Sherry Wynn is a great example. She's one of our first to be interviewed by Jeff Friedland. She's a double Olympian. She's based in Montana. She speaks virtually from her ranch. She's an hour and a half's drive from the nearest shop. So she's tremendous, fantastic. What she's doing with her workshops is to ensure that, people have seen quite a lot of her work. So, in one of her listings, we've published like 6 5-minute chapters of some of her previous work, really nicely produced video, so that when that Q&A happens, they're really questioning, because they've seen her video on demand elements previously. What was it like at the Atlanta Olympic Games? How does it feel to win a gold medal? What were you doing here? Or fun stuff. But also what she does in their workshops as well is get people using their limbs and arms. And she has everyone on full screen and meeting mode. And all of those things in terms of using the Zoom methodology is such an important thing. She had us doing it several months ago, like 30 or 40 people trying to do certain exercises that she was asking us to do with coordination. and just kind of brought everybody together, which was really cool. Of course, if there are even bigger audiences of the hundreds, then you can use Zoom polling and other elements. Meetings become kind of less intimate. I think my observations are that, 15, 20, 30 people is probably maximum. I don't know what you think in terms of those, Q&A beyond which people sort of start to lose their own personal confidence to want to ask questions and want to continue to. Does that make sense? I don't know what your thoughts are. Mark Oliver in Melbourne just finished a 250 person workshop, which went on for 2 days from Melbourne to India, and he managed to keep everybody's attention for that length of time, which is pretty extraordinary. Must be absolutely exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've done 4-hour workshops with large groups, and that's pretty exhausting. So doing it for 2 days would be.
And what do you do?
I'm talking online
yeah.
workshops.
What do you do to maintain that the freshness and interactivity, John?
So what I do, and I've got to work out, well, I have already worked out what I'm going to do in these 30-minute ones we're talking about now. But what I normally do in a half-day workshop that's online is I will start off with a fable. Then we unpack usually in all of my fables, there are 5 key principles in each of 5 territories. So we'll do a fable that relates to one territory, for example, the fable about the meerkats, which is about teamwork and building good teamwork. So what happens then is I'll tell that fable, those principles will be embedded in the fable. We then unpack them, and I get them doing a various number of exercises. They'll break out into chat rooms, into breakout rooms to go and discuss, give feedback to the general group from each subgroup. We discuss those points. They'll do exercises themselves individually. So what I'm trying to give them is something where they go away with an action plan that they can actually implement back in their own business to actually put those practices, those principles into life in their own organization. That's what I'm trying to do.
How might you distill that? Just because this is a workshop, not just a talking shop as well, I need to be cognizant of the fact that it's not just me talking. Yeah. How might we unpack that in 30 minutes? How could you distill that down? Breakout rooms perhaps not being appropriate within the 30-minute group. You use something like Hopin for breakout, do you?
Yeah, I wouldn't, for a 30-minute one, I wouldn't do the breakouts. I wouldn't do that. For the breakouts, we've normally done it on using Microsoft Teams. That's where I've done that, and WebEx. I've used WebEx for doing that. We just have that functionality in there, as does Zoom. But I would think for the 30-minute ones, what I'm anticipating is it would be 15 to 20 minutes of the fable, but I segue out of the fable from time to time to illustrate or bring out a key principle. That's very, very brief. In a 30-minute one, there's not a lot of discussion around that. When I've got a longer period of time, sometimes I'll use examples from real life. I'll use short case studies, things like that, to illustrate the key principle or key practices. I wouldn't do that in the 30-minute ones. I'll just explain them. And then at the end, what I would probably do after the fable is finished, when I've got 10, 15 minutes left, what I'm anticipating doing is then bringing those principles back up on the screen, talking to each one and asking questions of the group around each one. Like, for example, off the top of my head, when have you had an incident in your organization when this sort of things happened? And looking for feedback from the group and then discussion around.
How would you avoid the cold silence? Do you do cold calling or not?
I do sometimes, yeah. But I don't really like doing that. But what I always have is I've got a backup. So if no one responds, I can actually respond and give an example of from my own experience or something like that, so that we break that silence. Because that can be a dangerous thing to do, to throw a question out there and no one says anything.
Yeah, we've seeded those in the past, where we seeded the responses into a bunch of people. If there's a couple of hundred on a call, and then made sure that we seeded the response. But to actually get some interactivity out of that, it might be interesting to look at that fable concept of distilled down into that 15 minutes and take it in sort of 4-minute chunks and sort of poll in some sense, not necessarily digital, but poll, so that there is some kind of question response. So I think,
Yeah.
you know, in a 4-minute context, you know, you've got sort of 5 to 6 4-minute chapters in a 30-minute talk.
Yeah.
And I definitely think there needs to be at least, you know, within the 4-minute framework, there has to be a call and response, or at least some kind of acknowledgement that people are watching and listening, to
Yeah.
be able to make sure that we use this technology correctly.
Can I just ask a very basic question? I'm assuming that when we are booked for a half-hour session or whatever, that we are the hosts of that Zoom.
Correct. So that's a great
Yes.
question. And
Okay.
initially, at this present moment, you're booked, money is in escrow. You will either decide to accept or reject that based on a conversation that you have, or if you're comfortable, and so that happens, and then you call it. So it's they might say, actually, it's our Zoom or our WebEx because it's a staff meeting, and I'd like you to join the end of it if that's okay. And you'll say yes or no, or you lead with your own personal preference. My personal preference is Zoom, only because I feel comfortable with it, with the technology. My parting comment for you is obviously, it's a bit like I'm teaching the professors, is for whatever you do, don't try and use a fresh platform that you have.
No.
But
I just mean in terms of if one was doing polling, being the manager of the Zoom makes it a lot more seamless than if
you
you're
need to
coming
be made host, but also
Host.
I mean, again, some of these technical points are really good points to make. That we've had, I mean, I've had 40 or 50 workshops. We've had sessions with lots of people, lots of people, and make sure that they themselves have switched to speaker view, obviously, so that they can see you and whatever you decide to share in big screen. Quite a few people are not fully aware of how that works, and you know, because you can default to gallery mode, and then they'll sort of miss the point. And there's also other bits and pieces that you can do with Zoom to say that, you know, non-video participants are hidden so that you don't have these kind of just blank spaces all over the place as well. And you know, you can manage and dictate how that works to a degree.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, we're pretty much there. Any more?
Quick question. If someone does a 30-minute call, and they're giving 30 minutes of content, can you add another 15 minutes for Q&A, or should that be included in the 30 minutes?
I think it's up to the desire of the recipient, and if I always feel like if you're on a roll and you've got a buffer, you know, for a 30-minute call you should have an hour. You should have a 30-minute buffer anyway. So you want to include an extension of Q&A. It's the virtual equivalent. It's a good point, Maggie. It's the virtual equivalent of what my speakers have said to me over the last 2 years as we've been building this platform, is nothing beats, you know, the old school thing. Nothing beats when you're on that stage, you get the applause, you step off, and then a little queue forms of people who either want to buy your book or book you for other stuff. So, you know, all the love happens and the action happens perhaps after that, you know, Q&A. And you can say, look, I'll stay on for a couple of minutes if you've got other things to talk about. And, you know, because I think that maybe the energy is certainly lost there, that a little bit. If you say, if someone said, oh, I'm really interested in booking you for another thing. And so, well, look, just stay where you are and other people will drop off and you can get into it there. All righty.
Okay.
All right, guys, I've got to jump. You've got to, it's breakfast time in the United Kingdom. Enjoy your sunny, lovely places wherever you are, Mike, with the exception of you, because it's about minus 20, I think.
Thank you very much.
Minus 15, so not so bad. It's okay.
Okay, yeah, balmy.
Thank
almost.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
guys, a great pleasure. Take care.
Thank you, Robert.
Good to see you all.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.